flag. That's a flag. Awesome drive, man. Awesome drive.
It's nice to close out a race like that. That was awesome.
This is the Team Blaney Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to 2023 season episode 34 of the Team Blaney Podcast. My name is Adam Rogers, and alongside me is co-host Steve Mez. As always, this podcast is brought to you by fans for fans. Steve and I have been following the drivers of the Blaney racing family for 2 decades, and Team Blaney itself launched on social media in 2014. Each weekly episode of the podcast offers an in-depth analysis of Ryan Blaney's latest NASCAR Cup Series race, plus news notes and a lineup of special guests all throughout the year. This week, we break down the number 12 teams run in the Bass Pro Shops night race at Bristol Motor Speedway. And fresh off his trip to the aforementioned Bristol Motor Speedway is Steve Mez. Welcome back.
All right. It's great to be back. We made it back in one piece. It rained more on the ride home than it did Saturday night.
So crazy. So crazy. Yeah. And you can't blame the rain on me. I mentioned to you that on Friday, we were almost about ready. Get packed, get in the car, head up there, pulled up the weather app, saw that there was 60 to 70% chance of rain. I said, you know what? We're not going to bring our bad luck up there as well. We'll watch this one from home. And man, outside of just a couple short rain delays, you guys got the race in.
Yeah, actually, that's probably what happened. The closer you guys were deciding on driving up, the worse the forecast got. And then as soon as you turn the car back and put it in the garage, the skies opened up. And it was clear again. And no, it was threatening the whole time. That was the interesting part. Once you're sitting down inside of there, you can't tell. You're looking up over the edge trying to figure it out. And even I think Bob, because Bob usually posts this or that or tries to post a radar, but he even said that it's hard to tell because of the mountains down there and the way the storm is blowing in and whether or not they come up in a certain way and the wind blows around the mountain, and it seemed to diverge a lot of the storms as they were coming in, a lot of the rain as it was coming in, because I don't think it was really even lightning or thunderstorms. So, it was just regular rain, but it did not, when it did fall, it did not fall at any kind of rate to wash the track away. We have a special guest on later, and he's part of that team, and I messaged him back and forth about that after the fact because they didn't have to bring out the actual jet dryers, or the Tundras or whatever. They brought just regular dryers out there. The time or two they did have to come out, and did not take long. I think the red flag delay was only 13 minutes or something like that. I think I have my notes. Yeah. So yeah, it wasn't bad at all. And the racing, as we're going to go through this report, will end up going pretty quick because the racing was quick.
It was very similar to last year's race. I don't know why people expected more, because the night race last year wasn't super exciting either, but I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, here's what's happened. A couple things. First off, the car. We know it's not the track, because that's what I said, even a couple messages online and stuff, that I've been to the track a number of times now, going back to the Dave days, and the racing's always been good. There's always been, to the point where, okay, even if it's a one-lane track, you were able, if you were quicker than the guy in front of you, you were able to get up on him and push him and maybe nudge him, or bump and run, and so forth, even when, it was one lane. This car right now on this track, the configuration, they tried to spray PJ1 down 2 different occasions before the race to try to create the bottom lane. And the bottom lane was there for some restarts. But as the cars got spread out and separated, you had to be more than 0.2 or 0.3 faster to pass somebody, whether it was low lane, high lane, and nobody could do it. I've got some things in the notes that are just mind-blowing. For 40 laps in a row, 50 laps in a row, you just followed somebody and could never get to them to pass them. And maybe that's because the quality of the drivers is so good now too. I mean, 36 guys out there, and almost all 36 of them are pretty good, to where they don't miss it, and they don't miss it by much. When they do miss a turn or miss so unless the car kind of fails them in a way, sometimes it's not going to add a lot of cautions or restarts. And they just kind of got spread out after a while. And what are you going to do?
Yeah, well, maybe the Cup race was a little bit underwhelming. The truck race was pretty good. And I tell you what, I don't know if you got a chance to watch it, but the NASCAR Xfinity Series race on Friday night was fantastic. And I have to say, Marcus Smith and SMI is very lucky that Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s car caught on fire, because if he would have won that race, I'm not sure that Bristol would have been standing for the race on Sunday or on Saturday night, because man, I mean, it was just the energy was picking up. I mean, it's just, I feel like everybody's rooting for the guy, and then just a fluke deal happens to him and ends this race. But wow, that was impressive.
Well, that's because, there were a couple people on Twitter that were crazy, just going crazy. They were just like, we're going to storm the track. He wins. We're just going to climb the fences, storm the track. And I was all there for that. I wanted to see that for sure. I actually was watching some laps. I was out doing something, but I watched some laps from his in-car camera. And once again, this car is a different car than the car the Cup guys are running, so they're able to do different things with it. He got to the low lane, hit the PJ1, and was 0.2 of a lap faster than everybody. And it was almost like all his years of experience just showed how much better he was at running that place than everybody else who's out there with. And if that car had not caught fire, I think he was third or fourth when that happened. But he was
gaining, I think,
and he was catching all of them. If he had enough laps, he would have gotten to all of them, and that would have just been totally wild. He may not have passed for the lead since his actual car that he owns was leading, but that was a lot of fun. And like I said, those two series are different vehicles, so they are able to run differently and race each other differently on that track. It's just this car right now, and NASCAR's trying their best to figure it out. Doing tests and trying to do tests with spoilers and trying to do tests with the diffuser and trying to do tests on the bottom of the car, and just they're trying to figure out what they can do to make it race better on a short track. But as for right now, it's track position, and don't make a mistake. And these guys are so good that they're not making enough mistakes for anybody to capitalize on them.
Before we get to our race recap, I feel like we should pause for a moment and acknowledge the loss this week of a member of the NASCAR community, and that was Sherry Pollux, who's a former partner of Martin Truex Jr., a fixture in racing for the last several years, who's been battling ovarian cancer. We learned on Sunday morning that we lost Sherry, and we know some folks that were pretty close with them and the MTJ Foundation, and I think I speak for you as well. We want to send our thoughts and prayers out to the Pollux family and Martin and everybody else whose lives that Sherry touched throughout her battle.
Yeah, it's it was something that a lot of people thought might come at some point, but if you knew anybody in NASCAR, they all have nothing but great things to say about what she did, and brought people together. And I know fans of Ryan, if you're a fan of Ryan, Ryan always did something to help with her foundation. It was always in that charity event that was actually like in the last week or two, for the fashion show. So, our thoughts and prayers go out to everybody involved.
Steve mentioned to make sure you stay tuned into the show. Once we wrap up our recap of the Bristol night race, we do have a special guest that is involved in track maintenance and drying and operations and NASCAR's traveling circus from week to week. So kind of a different interview, but it's something you definitely want to tune into, especially after the events that we had to watch this past weekend at Bristol with the maintenance and drying and things that had to go on to keep that race going. So stay tuned in for that. But I'm going to let Steve go off and running here with a recap of practice qualifying and the Bristol night race.
Yeah, let's talk about Friday. Group B practice here. He's in Group B. Group A, the 5, the 17, 23, the 54, and the 20 are the fast 5 within, for the single lap. And they're all within 0.2, actually about 0.181. And, it's amazing how hundredths of a second will come down to the difference between getting into the top 10 for qualifying and not. The 22 car in his group was P11, but he was only 0.247 back of the fastest car. So, we're talking laps that were 15.186 for the fastest lap, 15-second laps. Group B, they were shooting for 25 laps, but 2 minutes in, he was up to P2 actually, which was 18th overall between the two groups because the first group ended up being faster. Comes in after 13 laps with P6 in that group, 22nd overall. .339 back of the 5. 10 minutes left to go in the session. 24, 48, 45, 11, and the 8 were the fast 5. They come back out. I noticed he did have an in-car camera for the and they put one on the rear of the car too, on that rear.
He did that one that Reddick and some other guys have carried the last couple of weeks. So
I think
they're hoping to get some good shots of him run the high side.
Right, the high side. I was at the track and they did put it on the big board a couple times from the track. I don't know if they put it on TV much or not, but they did put it on the big board at the track. He did move up to about P20 overall with a 15.469. He said it was too loose in that first run. With about 5 minutes left, they came back out. He says the front end just doesn't do anything. It just gets worse. They brought it back in. They ran 37 laps. The fast 5 would actually end up being the 24, 48, 45, 11, and the 8. So, they did some adjusting, in practice, and usually that's a sign. It's not necessarily a good sign because you hope that you unload and don't have to worry about it too much, but they at least tried to do some things. And it almost worked, actually. That's the funny thing is Group A comes out and the top 5 end up being the 20, the 54, the 7, the 23, and the 9. And they were in a range from 15.111 to 15.338. And the 5 car almost crashed on his lap, which, was pretty good. Pretty good save, actually. Group B, Ryan went out 14th. Ryan and Josh discussed calling out the flags because they're running 2 laps here for qualifying, not just 1. And he kind of wanted to know how the guys were coming to the green. And the in-car camera here was really interesting because as he runs the first lap and as it's going, he reaches over to his right and he's adjusting something over there on his right. And the second lap was a 15.230. So it was a faster lap than the first lap. And he was doing some of the brake bias. I think that's the only real in-car adjustment they have. And he was hurrying up and doing that. And he was P4 with 4 to go.
TV guys were surprised that he was faster on the second lap because that was kind of unusual in this session. Mm-hmm. And they were a little underwhelmed with his first lap. But yeah, he really picked it up on the second one.
Yeah. He was P4 with 4 to go, but he got bumped with 1 to go. The fast 5 were let's see here, the 11, the 6, the 24, the 34, and the 19. And they were in a range from 15.062 to 15.220. So first off, his lap was, 15.230. He missed it by 0.010. Not a tenth, but 100th. And his time would have been inside the top 5 in the other group. So he's going to, so he knew he's starting 11th,
Yeah, that worked out at least. It wasn't like ended up 12th or 13th. At least he was 11th, so not too far outside the top 10.
So we get to Saturday race day. Pit stall. I have number 10 here, but it's on the back stretch here. I'm sorry, he's on the front stretch. I'm sorry, he has pit stall 10 on the front stretch. I'm on the back stretch, but I can see all the way through to. If you zoomed in with my camera phone, I can see the pit box from behind the television screen they got back there. He was pitting with the 43 in front of him and open behind him, just past the start finish line. And we had stages of 125, 250, 500, 11 sets of tires, which they didn't need. And I don't even know what a fuel run was. Did they say on TV what the fuel run was going to be or could have been? Bob usually,
honestly, they could go a long time, like
Bob
80, 90 something laps.
Bob didn't put it in his notes. So I went to the tweet up before we delve deep into the race itself. Went to the tweet up. We had the whole all-star cast at the tweet up. We had Jeff, Jordan, Bob, NASCAR Chasm, which was really cool. I got to hold the paperweight.
That peacock paperweight that he'd been pining for forever.
I got to hold it, and I had a magnet with me, and I tried to stick it to it, and it didn't work. He's like, no, it's not magnetic. Like, oh, bummer. And Who else was? Kevin from Virginia was there. Said hi. Also, I want to say hi because we got to talk to a couple of Blaney fans. Rochelle, Nell from Michigan, Stellanaris was there. So it was really kind of cool because I got to, a couple of the Blaney fans that, huge fans of Ryan's and actually follow the podcast and so forth too. It was really cool to get a chance to see him. That's one of the bigger meet and greets there. And we met up with Jerry and our friends Jerry and Kirsten. They were there too. They actually got to meet Samantha Bush. She was doing a meet and greet herself a little later that afternoon. So we get to the race, and he starts P11 from laps. I got roughly for lap 5 once the restart spreads out to lap 67. He runs 11th. I'm not going to have a lot of details. Even the headsets and stuff, I couldn't hear a lot until the cautions. I've got to figure out what's going on with my scanner, but it's not loud enough or something. There really wasn't much being said anyway. Caution at lap 69 for the 16 and the 2. I think the 16 just had a little bit of an issue there, and the 2 got caught up in it. Pretty much ruined his day. We're pitting with 4 tires here. I think we only ended up having 4 pit stops on the day. We pit here, and it's a 9.91 stop.
Say it now. Every stop was good in this race. So if the crew needed a bounce back week or anything like that, I mean, they had it for sure.
Yeah, they were there. These guys are putting it together right now at the right time. The restart lap 76 and 11th. Then we get a caution at lap 107 for the rain. They do pit again here right before the end of the stage, 10.077. At lap 114, the 7 leads the field to the green. He stayed out. Now, some guys stayed out here, and we're going to find at the end of this stage, Ryan will end up staying out while these other guys come in and pit. So kind of this caution this time kind of flipped the field around a little bit. He ends up P19 here. Stage 1, the 20 wins. Ryan ends up in 18th at the end of the stage, but they stay out now. At lap 137, we do get the red flag, lasts about 13 minutes. We go ahead and restart lap 141 in 10th. By lap 143 back to 12th, by lap 169 back to 14th, and lap 177 15th. At lap 242, he's back to 16th, and stage 2, the 20 wins the stage, Ryan P16.
What I can tell all throughout the race, he kind of had the same complaints as he did in practice, like just can't turn, can't get the car to turn. He's able to run 12th to 15th around that area, and it kind of seemed like that was about as far as they were going to get in this one. They just weren't super fast off the truck and hard to, as you described already, early on, really hard to pass. Aero was kind of rough on even getting around up to guys and around guys. So it seems like they kind of had what they had. And at this point of the race, I was just watching points and just want them to just survive.
Yeah, they didn't update enough on the scoreboard there at the track because they got it on the Jumbotron and the scoreboard's on the side. Every once in a while, they show you the cut line, the two guys, 2 guys on the just below it, 2 guys just above it. They wouldn't dedicate enough space, so you couldn't tell, but you knew that every once in a while they show Ryan, he was still like 20 some points up, or at one point like 30 some points up, and he's like, okay, well, we're barring something stupid, we should be good. The 20 wins the stage 2. Ryan ends up 16th here. And we have a 9.944 stop. Once again, golden. Restart lap stage 3 here at 260 here, 54 leads. Now this is the 54 pit crew, who was the 20s pit crew, pulls off a huge stop here and puts him out front. So Ryan's in 16th here. Then at lap 2 laps later, we get a caution. This is that big one, the 7, the 22, the 31, the 51, the 77.
Unfortunate. Joey was really struggling. You mentioned the fact that, they stayed out, and he was just free falling through the field prior to that. And I think this is just what happens if you're running back there. But for him, it's just, I can't say they did anything wrong. It was bad luck. The 7 just slid up right up across the track into him. And rough.
And I don't remember. You're going to give statistics on who finished where to the cut line, but I don't think the Joey finished too far below it. I think if he was still running
just 5, it was like 5 points or so. And if there's an incident that happens with Truex later in the race where if he went out,
Yeah.
it would have flipped a lot of things around to where the 22 maybe would have got in. But
Yeah.
reminds me of Kyle Busch last year and some other folks. It's just heart wrenching for them. Ends their season.
Yeah, and this is one of those things about just being mistake free. We've heard Jonathan say base hits. Sometimes you just have to hit base hits, and this isn't a mistake that's his fault, mind you. But if this doesn't happen, like I said, he probably maybe he finishes 24th or 25th, right back there with Ryan, but he would have had more than enough. He'd have been 8 or 9 points better, and because of that, he would have got in, and somebody else would have got bumped out. We restart lap 272 in 15th. This is the point in time in the next couple laps here, I think by 283, where he hits the wall. It scrapes it. And I don't know, did he run into the 19th at point 2 or something coming down off the wall?
He might have made a little bit of contact, but yeah. From here on out, it was.
Well, that's the thing. It's by scrubbing the wall here. This is kind of like where things started to kind of, backslide for him in the next couple laps. And it's just basically because of that. He lost momentum. A couple guys got by him. He was trying to get his feet back underneath him, more or less, and by between laps 288 and 360, he slides back to 23rd. Then we get a caution for the 19, and the 19 even says, "What's the caution for? For me?"
They threw it so fast.
They threw it so fast, and it's like they wanted a caution. They were looking. They were hoping something fell off. They were hoping if that guy would have threw the cucumber earlier in the race, there would have been a caution.
He did get sideways. There was smoke. And there's cars, coming at him. So I understand it. But yeah, I thought it was funny when he said, "Wait, was that for me?"
Yeah,
so. You talk about luck, about the bad luck for Logano. Talk about the good luck here. He hits the wall, but he hits it at an angle to where it doesn't break the toe link in the back of that car, or his playoffs would be over at that point.
Would be over, yeah. So we pit at this point, and it's a 9.50. This is the Pytech pit stop of the race, as noted on all the Penske sites, and we restart lap 369 in 21st here. The 11 is leading at this point, and lap 486, he ends up in 22nd, which is where he ends up finishing, and Denny ends up winning. And this is survive and advance time. This is he built up enough points in the first 2 races to put himself where he needed to be. So the third race wasn't desperation, need to win. Hopefully that's what the next 3 weeks look like too.
Yeah, they just need to reset. Like, this race did not go their way. I think we mentioned in last week's episode that, his results at Bristol are kind of up and down. He's had some really good runs. The next gen car hasn't been necessarily as kind. It just seemed like outside of the 17 who ran up front for a little bit, the 34, 34 is probably wishing they did not have their problem they had at Darlington, because that's another guy. He ran up in the top 5, top 10 the entire race, had a great finish. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in the 47 car ran in the top 10 much of the race, finished 10th, I believe. A couple of those guys that, when you come into the playoffs with so few playoff points, I think the 34 probably didn't have any. The 47 did have 5 from the win. Or the 34 might have had a couple from some stage wins. But
he had 5 from the win too.
Oh, that's right.
He won. Yeah. Rodney Childers' interview post race I found very interesting, because he stated that all the Fords ran crappy except the 34, and he talked about the tire tests that they had there and the side force tests that they had, and how these things should have given them some data that they could have used, and they all had it and shared it, except for the 34 team. The 34 team didn't have the data, didn't get it shared to them, or however they didn't refuse, just didn't want to use it. And they're the only ones that actually ran really well. So a lot of guys going to be looking at their notebooks post race on this one. Luckily they don't go back to Bristol this year. Martinsville's a different breed. So, hopefully they'll figure it out by next year, because they're going to run it twice next year.
Yeah. Like you said, survive and advance. That's what they did. It's time to reset. 3 tracks ahead that they've run really well on in Ryan's career. And
he's won it all on 3 of these tracks.
Yep. Absolutely. Taking a look at the NASCAR Cup Series point standings now, as again, I keep saying reset over and over again, as they reset again for this round. The drivers that were eliminated from playoff contention were Joey Logano, Kevin Harvick, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Michael McDowell. So now the points go as follows. William Byron's the leader at plus 25, tied with Martin Truex Jr., also plus 25. Hamlin's plus 21. Larson is plus 12. Buescher is plus 10. Kyle Busch is plus 8. Bell is plus 5. Tyler Reddick is the driver on the bubble at just plus 3. Ross Chastain in the number 1 car is 9th at minus 3. Keselowski is 10th, also at minus 3. Ryan Blaney now 11th in the standings, below the cut line, minus 6 points. And Bubba Wallace, we didn't mention Bubba, but man, you talk about a team on the brink that needed to execute, have a solid day, got stage points, ran up front, slipped a little bit at the end. 23 car has a lot to be proud of, making the playoffs in the first place and executing this round of the playoffs and coming from, I think, is 19 points behind.
19 points behind. It's the second biggest deficit to come back from the cut line on the last race. So huge job. I mean, it's funny is I think there were only 9 cars on the lead lap by the end of the race. Ryan had been lapped 2-3 times, but Bubba was running 12th, 13th, and he got lapped, know? So, I mean, long green flag runs, just being committed to where you were and not letting anybody be able to pass you, was worth it.
Yeah. Kudos to them. Booty Barker, one of Dave's former crew chiefs, and Bubba on that. But here they are again in a deficit. They're at the biggest deficit of all the playoff drivers right now in 12th position, minus 14 points to the cut line. So again, Ryan Blaney, 11th position, minus 6. He went into this first round of the playoffs. Was it minus 1 or plus 1? I think he was above the cut line, right? So he's coming into this. Into the I've erased my board. You mean coming into the round of 16?
Yep. Now he was like 5, 6, 7, 8.
Plus 8 maybe, points. I think. Something like that.
Yeah. So he was, Now he's got
now he comes in, minus 6 now. So not a huge amount to overcome here, but man, you can't have a mistake though. This next round. So
this is the fun part is, how are the other 11 guys going to perform versus you? You could go out in stage 1 of the next race and finish second in the stage and have 4 or 5 guys not get stage points. And if it's the right 4 or 5 guys, and you're right back up into above the cut line, going into stage 2. So this is very makeupable. I almost made up a word. This can be made up basically within the first stage, depending on what the other 11 guys do. Just like Martin Truex almost proved you could be at the top of this board to start a round, and by the end of the round, get knocked out of the playoffs. So even though he has a 25 point advantage right now, that could disappear in 2 weeks also. So, what I find really interesting, besides, there's only 3 Fords, is that, Ryan's the only Penske. There's 2 RFKs, and you've got both the 2311 cars are still in it too. So there's 2 programs there who have made leaps and bounds within a year. This is both year 2 of RFK's been around, but I mean, of the Brad era there, really, really performing well at the right time of the year. So, really though, if we're going to analyze it a little bit, like I said, within the first stage or 2, I can see them jumping above the cut line and just, like I said, stay steady in the first couple of weeks, get to the 3rd week where you don't need to do anything crazy. And then sure, you can points race and stay out while others pit at the Roval,
So that's it from Bristol. The stage is set now for the round of 12 in the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. Well, Steve, I'm going to start this special interview out with a riddle. Mm-hmm. If you've been to a NASCAR race in the past couple of years, you've seen this driver on track, but you probably don't know his name. Lucky for us, we do.
He drives in all the series on track.
He does, and his name is Josh Novak. And Josh, welcome to the Team Blaney podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Didn't think you'd be introduced that way, did you?
No, that was a great introduction. I like that.
So, Josh, you are an integral part of the NASCAR, not just the Cup Series, but as Steve said, Xfinity Series, Truck Series, the weekend at the racetrack, and because of that, you are one of the drivers out there. I don't know what to call it specifically. It's like the track prep team. It's not the track drying team. You drive one of those big trucks out there that helps get racing going every weekend.
Yeah, it's called the Elgin Track Sweeper. It's essentially a specially built road sweeper that's for racetrack. So it can go in certain bankings without leaking any fluids out of it or anything like that. It's a little bit heavier duty, so it can go on the racetrack. I didn't realize before I started how much that Elgin actually can do. It does a lot of stuff.
Yeah, for those who are unfamiliar, totally unfamiliar, you actually have a TikTok page under Janman 33, JANMANN 33, and every once in a while, when NASCAR lets you, you'll kind of put out a little video behind the scenes. And the one I saw that was really, really a big one was I think it's Charlotte for the 600 there when it rained that weekend, and you were actually just emptying out that thing. How much water was in there?
I was completely full, and I believe when the back end is completely full, it's 1,200 gallons. So it was tip top full. Like I turned the back engine off, and you could see the water spitting out of the side door, and I'm like, yeah, I need to go dump. So, that was one of my more popular videos. If I'm on the track, any one of my videos that I'm on track, it usually is a pretty popular video. So it's kind of neat.
Now, kind of like explain to us, like, where you came from and how you got to NASCAR. Because when we do these interviews with a lot of different people we've done, they have a certain path where they slept on somebody's couch, or they were a mechanic here and they went to the dirt track. Yours is a little bit different because of what you do. How did you get to NASCAR? What kind of things were you able to do in your career to get to where you're at now?
So I started off driving a regular semi truck, hauling freight across the country. I was in a truck competition. They call it like a truck rodeo up in North Dakota, because my company was based out of there, and I got second place. Nice big old trophy that sits above my mantle. And then I ended up, I met a girl, moved to Arkansas, and I went local. And on Facebook, I'm in a group, an Army group and a trucker group. And this one guy, he was in both groups with me, and he said, "Oh, I started working for NASCAR." I'm like, "Oh, tell me more about it." He'd show me pictures. And at the end of the season, he's like, "I'm leaving. Why don't you put your application in?" And I'm like, "All right, I will." And this was back in 2019. So put my application in. I drove from Arkansas to North Carolina for the interview. They called me 2 days later saying, "Hey, you want to come work?" I'm like, "Yup." So January of 2019, I drove out and embarked on my first season of NASCAR. And that season, I did cup boxes. So I hauled around the 24, the 15, the 4, and 18. So those are the pit boxes I hauled that year.
What company is this actually working for, NASCAR, or is this?
Their only customer is NASCAR and NASCAR team. It's called Champion Tire and Wheel. Great company. It's a lot of fun to work for them.
And now, so you just mentioned the fact that you are hauling pit boxes. So people might think that the trucks that are out, we've interviewed hauler drivers on this podcast before. They might think that the team hauler has everything in it that everybody needs. But in fact, your company kind of steps in and brings a lot of the extra equipment around to the track that they need to operate throughout the weekend.
Correct. Yep. We haul their pit boxes, their little, they used to be called crash carts. I don't know what they're called now. It's the little box that sits behind their pit box on pit road. We haul some of their generators, golf carts, things like that, grills for some of the teams that they do their own cooking. We haul their grills and stuff, their fridges.
So, well, we were doing a little history on you, and we saw some things in the past there that you've done too that kind of like are interesting, because nobody's like quite done some of the things you've done, and you're still a young guy too. So, can you tell us a little bit about how you were famous in your hometown?
I'm famous there for a couple reasons. The first reason, I was the youngest person in Michigan to ever run for a county sheriff. I didn't get it, but I ran twice. And in between the two elections, I actually put out a video on YouTube of me ordering Taco Bell in the voice of Elmo, and it went crazy viral. I think it's at 3 million views right now, but it's like 14 or 15 years old. So it's, I still get comments on it. I still get a handful of comments every week, and people are like, man, this was like my jam back in the day, or I can't believe I'm still here watching this video 12 years, 13 years later. And I'm just like, man, this is great. I got a lot of fans out there and they really love it. I really wish I would have kept up with it, but
Steve mentioned your TikTok. So obviously you had that experience like really early on with social media back then. What got you into kind of starting this TikTok that turned theme toward, kind of what your job is and giving kind of people a little bit of a behind the scenes peek, maybe on an effort in NASCAR that they have known nothing about?
Yeah, I figured that, a lot of people don't really understand what goes on to prepare for a NASCAR race or setting it up. So I figured, hey, I can show a couple things because a couple of the drivers here have pretty big followings on TikTok and they did the same thing. I'm like, let me try it out. And the first video I did that actually got some attention was me hooking up airlines to a boring trailer, and I got like 14,000 views. And I'm like, I didn't even do anything though. I put an airline on the trailer. That's all I did. So after that, I kind of gained a little bit of traction. Like, I'm not like huge on TikTok, but I do have enough subscribers I can go live. So I've done a few lives, and people ask me questions, and I'll give them answers, and it's usually when I'm sitting at the racetrack. When I get there, I got time, I sit out and I hang out and I interact and answer questions and things like that.
Yeah, I think I saw one from Atlanta. It was like, you was great because you were able to just answer question after question, and pretty much till everybody was done asking questions. It's, it was really a cool thing. What does your week look like? Like we were talking, I think before we went on about how you don't get close to home very often during the 36 weeks, 37 weeks, 38 weeks that the season goes on. What does your travel look like? And then what does your weekend itself look like as far as what you have to do?
So Sunday at the end of the race, I take my Elgin to like the maintenance building, and they have like piles. I'll dump my Elgin. I'll dump all the stuff I've picked up throughout the weekend. And then I hold water on board. I have a 300-gallon water tank. So I'll spray it out with the pressure washer. I have a pressure washer on there. I'll spray out the back end, get it clean, looking good for the road. And then I dump all the water out of it from the holding tank. And then I take it to where our trucks are at, where the Tundra guys are. And I load my trailer, and I haul one Air Tundra, my Elgin, and our company van. One of our company vans. We have two of them. I'll get on the road, and depending on how far away the track is, like I'll use Kansas, for instance. I made it a couple hours down the road and called it a night. Took my 10 hours off, got back on the road, and finished out my journey here to Bristol. We'll usually get there the day before unload. So we'll take the trucks off our trailer and just park them, kind of get things ready. We'll sit around. We'll hang out with other guys who got there early. And then the next morning we'll get up. We usually start doing everything between 7 and 8 in the morning. We have to put together all the Air Tundra. So I help on that since I'm still technically part of the Air Tundra crew. We'll put them together, and then we go park our semi trucks, and then we go to our hotel. And depending on, how early or how late we get to the hotel, we might have a day or two off, and then we'll go to the track. We attend the track service meeting because we're on track. After the meeting, they have what is called breakouts, and each little division of the track service team goes and does their thing with their like NASCAR liaison. So, the tow truck guys, fire EMS, restoration, which I'm part of restoration. We'll go, and usually our liaison is the race director for that race. So he'll talk to us. He'll let us know like the schedule of events, what he'll be looking for. And his main job is to make sure we stay safe on the track while we do our thing, whether, it's a cleanup truck going out and putting down product, if there's oil out, or me going out to vacuum up that trail, oil dry. He's looking out for us to make sure we're out there. So we don't just go out there and drive out on the track willy-nilly. We'll stop at the edge of where our cutout is, and he'll say, okay, Elgin, you're clear to go out, go high. And then I go out, I go up to the high side of the racetrack, and I do what he says. And then I get cleared back to my cutout to make sure I don't get hit by a car, especially if I'm on the low side of the track and they just did pit stops and I have to cross the exit to pit road. I usually stop right before the exit and let the race director tell me, hey, Elgin, you're clear to cross pit road. Because if I don't, a car will hit me, and that will not be good. And I don't really want to make ESPN's top 10 list of stupid sports mistakes.
Something similar to that, and it has a Blaney connection to it. Now, this would have been well before your time with the track crew, but Dave Blaney, Ryan's dad, was leading the Daytona 500 when that kind of infamous Juan Pablo Montoya hitting the track dryer happened, and Dave's leading the race, and there's a potential that the race was going to be called at that point. Now, I said it's before your time, but is that still among that group? Is that still like a story that they kind of hand down over the years, or still kind of point to in just a way to how to maybe to avoid anything like that in the future?
Yeah, it comes up every once in a while between the guys, especially the ones who were there when it happened. And that's why we all wear like helmets and fire suits now, because of that. At least that's what I'm told. So I got a fire suit I wear. I got a helmet I wear. But that's directly because of Juan Pablo Montoya hitting the jet dryer. I remember watching that race and I was just blown away. I was like, wow. There's always potential for, a mistake to happen. And you don't want to be that guy, but that's why they tell you, keep your head on a swivel, keep looking, even if they say you're clear, look out your mirrors, look out the window to make sure you are. I do have a lot of trust in the race director, though, because he sees everything, or she. So I do have a lot of trust that they are telling me truthful things, that I'm good to go. So I don't get hit by a race car, because I can guarantee that's going to hurt.
So, okay, we get to, let's say, race day. How early do you got to be there on race day? And then what kind of like prep do they do before race versus, after a race or during a race even?
So it depends on what time the race is. So like, let's say the race is at 2:00. Track service meeting is typically going to be about noon. And we want to get there to kind of beat the traffic if it's one of those races where we have to. So our hotel is usually within a half hour from the racetrack. We have to leave and get to the racetrack before track service meeting. Usually we'll stop at a gas station, fill up our rental cars with some gas, get some snacks or something, a drink. Sometimes it's an early day. Like now we blow the track off before every race, and that's usually like 4 hours before track service meeting, especially on the cup days, because they have like pace car rides, they bring out the stage, so we can't do an adequate cleaning before the race, so we have to do it like way before track service meeting. So there's been times we've been at the racetrack by 7:00 to get ready and do stuff, and then we're off for 4 hours before track service meeting. It's like, okay, that's fun.
Now, Daytona is the closest track to me, so I've sat through numerous rain delays and crash cleanups and a variety of things. What is it like to maybe be part of a team that fans probably don't want to see out on the track too often? Because if you're out on the track, that means cars most likely aren't out on track, except for maybe just the typical stage breaks or something like that.
Yeah, there's been times we've been booed going out, even before I did the Elgin. Like last season, I was strictly on Air Tundras. We'd go out and they would cheer for us. Say, "Oh, yay, awesome, they're out here." And then after, it stops raining, we're driving the track, it starts raining again, we got to stop. They get a little agitated and they're like, "Okay, come on, it's time to race." And we have got booed before. Nothing too crazy. Maybe it was kind of just a joke, but we've been booed before, and it's part of the job. The race doesn't go on without a dry track, so we got to be out there to dry it. So.
Do you ever get frustrated? Because again, having sat through many of these, and even I think it was Atlanta, earlier this year or a few months ago, where the race was about to start. You guys got the track dry, everything's ready to go. They did some ceremonies, and then it just rains again, and that just causes another delay. And then it rains again later on, and the race gets called. Is it ever frustrating? Like right when you guys get the all clear, everything's dry, go to pull off, and then seconds later it just starts to downpour again. Now, I know it's a job, but it's still probably a little frustrating.
Yeah, it does get a little frustrating, because you've been out there for a couple hours making them laps to get the track dry, and you're just like, man, all that work, I just wasted all that. I mean, I guess it's not really wasted, because we don't know if the rain's going to come back or not. So, but yeah, it gets a little frustrating, because you did all that work and then you got to stop and you got to do it all over again. I mean, some tracks take 2 hours to get completely dry. Some tracks are a little bit faster. If it's warm out, it takes less time because the heat from the track will help dry too. And if it's windy, I think we had a track dry in like 45 minutes one day. I can't remember which one it was. It was a smaller track, though, not real big. We had the track dry in 45 minutes. I was like, yeah.
When the NASCAR app has scanner, and they do actually have the officials channel on there. And sometimes actually when there is a weather delay, I actually listen. So what, everybody has like a code name or something like that, or each truck they call truck out to the track by the type of truck or something like that. How do they call you out there?
Yeah, they'll call you out by like what your truck is. So like a cleanup truck, it's usually like a white pickup truck, and it's got the attachment on the back that's got like a broom and like a hopper full of that oil dry. That'll be a cleanup truck. And they're usually numbered based on what turn they're in. So like cleanup 1 would be like turn 1, cleanup 3 would be turn 3. Me is just the Elgin. If we're at, so any road course or 2-mile track, we'll have 2 Elgins. The red Elgin, which is me, I'll be Elgin 1, and the blue Elgin will be Elgin 2. And some tracks have their own Elgin. So Kansas has their own Elgin. So they'll do the same thing. They'll call him Elgin 2. They'll call me Elgin 1. Calls Elgin 2. I sit there. I watch all the action happen. I don't get to go out and play on the racetrack. And then like, I don't listen to the fire channel. That's a whole separate channel just because it would be so much traffic.
Yeah.
So I'm on the specific race director channel. The wreckers, or fire, ambulance, wreckers, they're all on the same channel. So they deal with another person that's up in the tower with the race director that's sending them out to an accident or a scene that they got to take care of. So I don't get to hear any of that. I just hear whatever on the main channel.
Now, you mentioned that you were watching the race when there was the incident with Juan Pablo. So you have been watching NASCAR for at least, a little while. Did you grow up as a kid watching the sport too? And did you have favorite drivers along the way?
I did. I actually lived in Daytona Beach for about 6 months when I was like 5. And I remember going past the racetrack all the time. But that's about, I believe I started watching about 92. Being a young, I didn't know what it was all about. I just liked seeing the cars flip over because, I'm like 5 or 6. I'm like, oh, cool. As I got older, I realized you don't really want to see the crashes like that. So yeah, I've been a fan for a long time. I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but my favorite driver was Jeff Gordon. My mom hated it because she was a Mark Martin and Rusty Wallace fan. And there's really no driver that I dislike other than that. Yeah. Right now I follow like Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, and Eric Jones. I like him. He's a Michigan boy too, so yeah. I got Brett Keselowski, the two guys from Michigan. I kind of follow them a little bit. I like Eric Jones a little bit more than Brett Keselowski, but I'll still root him on. I mean, he's been doing some cool stuff this year. So,
do you ever get any interaction with any of the drivers, during a weekend at all, or
not a whole lot. I have seen like. Who did I see? Oh, I saw Ryan Preece last weekend doing a track walk, and I kind of gave him a nod. He waved to me. I actually, when it was at Martinsville, when he got the pole, I actually went up to him and congratulated him because he's also one of my favorite drivers. Funny story, back in 2019, we went to GoPro in Mooresville, and I actually got to race with him. Well, I ended up having the back end of his car from the first Talladega race, and it was in my car. And one of the guys I worked with was with me, and he's a jokester. He's one of them guys. And see this guy in a big lifted truck parked next to me. He got out, and he's just talking crap. And he's like, oh, yeah, hey, we got a back end of a Ryan Preece car in the back seat of his car. We'll sell it to you real cheap. And he just kind of laughed and kept going. Turns out it was Ryan Preece. We tried to sell Ryan Preece. I'm like, oh, great. But I figured like I was going to try to keep up with him at GoPro. No, he was like 20 seconds ahead of me the whole time. I thought I was going fast. That dude didn't even slow down on the corners. I'm like, I don't know how you do it, but he's a professional race car driver. I'm not. So that's why he was that much better than me.
That's kind of going to be my next question, was that you've made probably more laps than anybody outside of a driver out on these Cup Series tracks. Did it ever cross your mind? Did it ever cross your mind to actually get into a race car at any level? So, I mean, you've been go-karting, but any other inkling to do it beyond that? Because you probably know all the good lines.
Yeah, I've always thought of it, as a kid, even as a teenager. I should drive like a late model or a dirt car or something, and it's just never materialized. But I do know some people that work for the NASCAR experience, and I'm getting a ride in a car before I die. So, like, whether I take a ride or actually drive it, I'm going to do it soon. Kind of hoping Phoenix I get that chance, because I think they're going to be out there for Phoenix. So I'm like, let me get a ride.
I got to do it one time. I got a ride along. I wasn't driving it, but I got to do a ride along at Bristol, actually, of all places. And the G-forces just in the seat are they're incredible. Yeah, it's quite a feeling. I can't imagine driving it, but I was sitting there for it.
Wow. Yeah. Bristol is one of those tracks that the Elgin track sweeper does not go in the banking on. So I don't get to experience the banking in a vehicle, but I have climbed up the wall in the middle of turns 1 and 2. And let me tell you, it does not look that steep until you actually run up that thing and you're like, wow. Mm-hmm. And then you get up there and you stand up and you turn around and face the inside of the racetrack. And then you kind of get that wobbly feeling, because like it's so steep and you can't really see the ground in front of you when you're looking straight ahead. And it took me a minute to get my bearings to actually come back down, but you kind of want to go down sideways. If you go forward, you might fall over.
Yeah, I could see going end over end pretty easily.
Yeah.
Now, I've mentioned we've talked to, hauler drivers before on the show, and they've kind of mentioned, they were in the industry outside of NASCAR, hauling stuff, just like you were, and just kind of discovered this idea like, oh, I could, I love the sport. I could be involved in it. Would you recommend kind of what you do, even if it wasn't part of the track maintenance team, but even if you're just one of the ones that was hauling the equipment around the country, would you, recommend this type of job to anybody else out there? And is it possible? Is it attainable for people out there to do what you do?
It absolutely is. They actually hire from all over the country. They don't require a racing background. They do require you to be a hard worker, though. But yeah, anybody can apply. You do have to have a Class A CDL updated with your medical card to be able to do this job. Unless you want to work in the tire shop, you can do that. But we hire all sorts of people, no racing background required. And then if you ever want to move on to like a team job or something, it's a little bit easier to attain a team job when you've said you've worked for Champion.
Well, Josh, I really want to thank you for giving us this time. We've been following you on social media pretty much all year long. I know Steve was a big fan early on and really was hoping we can get to chat with you. And like I said, we're big fans. We've seen you run plenty of laps for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I tell all my friends, like I run every race and I finish 180 laps down. That's what I tell them, because I get out there and I do at least 5, 6, 7 laps. So.
Awesome.
But yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on the show.
All right. Thanks again.
Well, Steve, that was a really fun interview that we just had there with Josh Novak, driver of that big Elgin sweeper truck that, like as we've said before, most of you have probably seen run around tracks across the country. And now you know the guy that's behind the wheel. And thanks for setting that one up, Steve. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, he's he, like we said in there, he's got a little bit of a TikTok thing going on. If you can follow that, go ahead and follow it. He tries to come out some stuff when he can, when he's got time to do it. He's not, doing it while he's out there driving that thing. But Bristol, he only got like 1 or 2 chances to go on the track. He was like, I messaged him later on with a picture and he was like, yeah, darn, I wish I was out there more, but they really didn't have a lot to clean up. Luckily, not a lot of crashes. So, but we'll see what happens in the weeks to come here, and keep an eye out for him on the track there. If you're at a race or something, give them a wave. Those guys are there every week and they do a hell of a job. And they're kind of like, he messaged me back about getting some, being recognized a little bit, because there are guys, like you said earlier, that travel every week to every track and do all these things, and nobody pays attention until it starts raining or, when they're mad about something or whatever. But these guys are there every week to make sure that everything runs as smoothly as possible.
One more thing to wrap up from the trip to Bristol Motor Speedway, and that is the results from our Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. And what have I been saying all year, Steve, is that my team heats up in the playoffs. And here we are once again at a great week for my team in the NASCAR Fantasy League. I'll go over my starting lineup. Denny Hamlin, the winner, got me 47 points. Brad Keselowski got me 33. Ty Gibbs, 42. My low man on the totem pole here, the one that did not get me too many points, Kyle Busch, which was kind of shocking. Kyle Busch getting lapped at Bristol. Didn't have a good night. Only 17 points. Christopher Bell, number one ranking in points, got me 54. Had Ryan Blaney in the garage. Obviously, that was a good decision with the way that 12 teams run went, unfortunately. Take a look at my featured matchups. I had Martin Truex Jr. over Harvick. That was right. I had Bubba Wallace over Logano. That was right. I had Bell over Buescher. That was right. And that's the only one I got wrong. I had Ryan over Kyle Busch, and that was wrong by just 2 positions. So I ended up with 223 points earned, 8th position in points earned at Bristol. Can you top that?
No.
But
But you knew that already. I had a decent lineup. I had Hamlin. I had Reddick. Ryan ended up being the low man on my totem pole. Larson, Bell. Bell gets all the stage points by winning the first 2 stages. I did not do very well with the picks, unfortunately. Nothing extra down there. But overall, I still got some points, but I need to pay better attention to it. There was just way too much going on with, although I did have Logano in the garage, so I kind of lucked out there because I couldn't have changed anything when I got to the racetrack anyway. That's the other thing. Some tracks have great Wi-Fi. Bristol's not there yet.
They're not one of them.
They're not one of them. Not yet. So work on that, Bristol. Give us that much at least so we can social media the crap out of it while we're there. But I'm waiting for next week. Onward to Texas.
So you ended up in a 3-way tie for the 40th position in points earned at Bristol with 190 points. Let's take a look at the top 10. Tied for 10th, Bears Motor Club and Factory of Sadness 6 with 221 points. 9th, Big Burn, 222. My team, Team Blaney host Adam, in 8th, 223. 7th, Whip Wilson at 228. 6th is Adjuster 4, 230. 5th is Fike 21, 238. Go 12 Go was in 4th with 243 points, and 3rd was Doug QC with 246. 2nd was the Nutty Gamer at 256, and by 1 point, the Zero Schlitz Given with 257 points wins the weekend at Bristol Motor Speedway. Let's move over to the overall playoff standings. Your team, Mez 12, just slipped outside the top 10 this week in the 11th position with 620 points. Tied for 9th, we have US Calvin and Fike 21 with 625. In 8th is JD Racing, 626. 7th, Factory of Sadness 6, 640. Tied for 5th here between Moose Hunter 1960 and Cool Guy 2K at 641. 4th, Whip Wilson, 644. My team, Team Lady Host Adam, 3rd position, 649 points, ring the bell. 2nd, Zero Schlitz Given, 661. And in the 1st position in the playoff standings, the Nutty Gamer, 674 points. Man, I don't even want to read overall anymore. Let's just stick to these playoff standings because things are looking good for me. But we will go to the overall standings where things are a little bit different, though I have moved up multiple positions, getting into the low 30s now. 34th position for my team with 5,258 points. You have, I think you're holding steady around the same area here. 15th position, Mez 12, 5,471 points. Let's take a look at the top 10 in the overall standings. So these are points that have been earned all throughout the year. We have a tie for 9th, Go 12 Go, JD Racing, 5,527 points. In 8th, we have Fike 21, 5,556. 7th is Blaring Idiots, 5,594. 6th is Eric D15, 5,603. 5th is Go Larson, 5,624. And 4th is Christian Dana, 5,628. 3rd is Penske Fan 24, 5,643. 2nd is Blaney's Daisy, 5,726. And leading the way in the overall standings in the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League is still Factory of Sadness 6, 5,793 points. And that brings us to Bristol Motor Speedway's in the rear view. Texas Motor Speedway is out the windshield. as we head there this weekend for the NASCAR Cup Series racing and Xfinity Series racing. It's going to kick off on Saturday, September 23rd, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. NASCAR Cup Series practice and qualifying on USA, followed at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time by the NASCAR Xfinity Series Andy's Frozen Custard 300, also on USA. And then Sunday, the first race in the round of 12 in the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The Auto Trader, man, this one always trips me up every year. I think 3 years in a row. Auto Trader, Echo Park, Automotive 400 on the USA Network. Texas Motor Speedway in Fort Worth, one of Ryan Blaney's best NASCAR Cup Series tracks. Average start of 9th, average finish of 15.5, 8 top 10s, 4 top 5s in just 14 starts. And I can tell you, his statistics would be better if not for his first 3 career races where he finished 42nd, 43rd, and 29. Outside of that, all top 15 finishes except for once in 2019. He went out with overheating, finished 37th. The last 5 races at Texas Motor Speedway, all top 10s. And that's not counting his win in the NASCAR All-Star race just a couple of years ago. So last few finishes, 8th, 7th, 4th, 6th, 4th, and throw in that victory in the NASCAR All-Star race. So he has run well there in the next-gen car, 4th last year in this race. I'd say we kick off this round of the playoffs with a really solid finish. And, man, I would just love to see that 12 car out there contending for the win this weekend.
Yeah, let's get to the top 10. In the qualifying first. Let's get to the chance for qualify for the pole, because we know that the car's, once he gets there, he can do it. And then get up near the front and stay out there most of the day, stay away from the trouble. Like I said, you're not just trying to race for yourself for points, but the other 11 guys and what they do during the day have a lot, of effect too. So, right now, get to the point where you're end the weekend above that cut line and moving forward, So I'm sure they'll big picture race that way. What's interesting about this year now is Joey is out. So let's see what happens with practice and qualifying. Is Joey in Group A and Ryan in Group B? I know Austin was trying to help both programs too, but a lot of times Joey, I think, runs some setups there similar to Ryan's even. So it'd be interesting to see if they try and do something a little opposite or try to bounce something off the wall in the 22 camp to see if it'll help the 12 camp, So that'll be interesting to see too during practice and qualifying.
Yeah, that's one of those things. I mean, that's the first thing I saw people talking about in our Discord chat after the Bristol race was, all right, now Team Penske can throw all their weight behind the 12, all their resources behind the 12. And I mean, to some extent, that's probably true, but they still also want to get the 2 and 22 into victory lane or great finishes. I mean, Joey might be out of the playoffs now, but if he has, an outstanding run through the end of the playoffs, he can still keep moving up in the point standings and the owner's point standings. And that means a lot as far as money and everything else goes for those teams. So they have a lot to race for the rest of the way. But like you said, there is an opportunity for them to try a few things out in an effort to help the 12 car.
Yeah. And I'm sure on track during the race, you'll see if there's an occasion where they're running near each other that he'll try to do some things to make sure that the 12 can get by and maybe other people can't get by.
This is owed.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. You're right. I wasn't going to go that aggressively toward it, but you're right.
I am.
Yeah, you're right. It's owed. It's owed. It's owed. You used the term wingman somewhere in a post, didn't you? This past
was that too soon?
No, that's exactly right. It's exactly what I thought of too. Now it's your turn to be the wingman, buddy. And as a 2-time champion, I'm sure he can figure out how to do that. It'd be fun to watch. It'd be fun to watch to see what happens. But I'm pretty sure he's going to help out. I'm sure Ford, wants to make sure that the Penske has a Ford that makes it to the next round too. So
let's we just talked about fantasy, so let's kind of bring fantasy back into this discussion heading to Texas Motor Speedway. I think Ryan Blaney is going to be one of those folks that I'm going to have in my starting lineup because of his success here at this track. Let's take a look back at the last 10 winners here. And remember, we had 2 races here for several years. This is the first year right, in a while that they haven't had 2 full races because they took away the one race and sent it over North Wilkesboro this year. And prior to that, the other race was the All-Star race for a few years. So last 10 races, I'll go all the way back to 2017 with Jimmy Johnson, who's not going to be in the field. Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, Austin Dillon, Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick. Kevin Harvick was just eliminated from the playoffs. Has had a ton of success at this track. Kyle Busch kind of has his back against the wall a little bit. He is above the cut line in the playoff standings. He also is in the car that won this race last year. So who are you looking at as far as fantasy lineups go, or just who do you think is going to be strong in this run at Texas Motor Speedway?
Right now, the 11 team is hot. I mean, they won the last week, and they probably could have won the 2 races before that if it weren't for cautions at the wrong time and so forth. The 20 car has gotten the pole for 3 consecutive weeks. Now, if his pit crew, which they swap pit crews, by the way, but if his pit crew actually performs well, who knows? Because they actually swapped pit crews and it didn't work out for him for a couple of weeks there. So who knows? Sometimes not all the pit crew either. I'm just saying. But those are 2 guys, from the Toyota camp. And like I said, the Fords are the RFK Fords and Ryan. So it's really interesting to see like Buescher or Keselowski, how they're going to get up there. And then, Hendrick is just Hendrick. They show up and they do their thing. Interesting, a little point too about that is you were talking about guys still running for owners points and stuff. The 9 car is actually still in the owners championship points.
Yep. 23 is out.
The 23 is out. So the 9 car, these next 3 weeks still has something to race for himself also. And we know that from what we learned last year, owners points is everything because, those guys, get paid on owners points. They don't get paid out by where the driver finishes end of the year. So, that'd be kind of interesting too, to see what they do in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah. I'm definitely looking at some of those Toyota cars. Wouldn't it be a statement if 2311 and Bubba Wallace went out and won this race? Really good at Kansas. They've been really good on these 1.5-mile style tracks. His teammate Tyler Reddick won last year, obviously in an RCR car, though. So the 45 is another guy that could contend. But I think you're right. It's Denny Hamlin, I don't know if this is his season of destiny. Now, there's a lot of races to go, a few more rounds to go in the playoffs. But, there's a time when this team was hitting on all cylinders at the right time. It's now. And not a Denny Hamlin fan. And obviously, while Ryan Blaney is in this playoff run, I want Ryan Blaney to win the championship. But I know there's a lot of people out there that maybe aren't even fans of Hamlin, but might want to see him get that monkey off his back and finally win a championship to go on, with all the other crown jewel races and everything else, all those trophies he has on his mantle. The last thing he doesn't have is a championship. And this might be his best year, best shot to make that happen. So I'm looking at Kyle Busch, looking at Hamlin, looking at Reddick. Kyle Larson, he won a couple races ago at this track, and he's a threat to win pretty much every week, any track. But practice and qualifying, definitely going to be something I'm going to want to watch because that's going to tell you about speed really fast.
William Byron is just quietly plodding along during all this too. And he starts way above the cut line and just kind of like clicking off the finishes. So he's another one who could just jump up and take it all at the end of a race.
So again, if you want to tune in this weekend, Texas Motor Speedway, Saturday, September 23rd, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the NASCAR Cup Series practice and qualifying on USA. Sunday, September 24th, NASCAR Cup Series, Auto Trader, Echo Park, Automotive 400 on USA.
And one more thing before we go anywhere, Saturday night, Sharon Speedway, the World of Outlaws come back to town.
And I don't have confirmation, but have to imagine that Dave Blaney, Dale Blaney, going to be in the field. Both of them have 3 wins at Sharon Speedway each in 2023. Dave has a win in this race, the World of Outlaws race, a couple of years ago at Sharon. Once again, time for those Blaney brothers to defend their home turf. And if you've got Dirt Vision, go ahead and tune in. You can watch that race Saturday night. Yeah,
I think Dale ran this past weekend. I think he won like a B main to get to the A main. So, he's running real well right now too. And, get a little tune-up race before Saturday. So yeah, we have no confirmation. We're just floating the idea out there, but but check out your Twitter by Saturday afternoon, because the 32 and the 10 car might show up there, and might be the place to be on Saturday night.
Absolutely. I think I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this might be the last race of the year at Sharon Speedway too. So definitely the last visit by the World Outlaws there in 2023. So thank you, everyone, once again for tuning into this episode of the Team Blaney podcast. If you'd like to learn more about myself or co-host Steve, just listen to our very first episode that explores our Blaney racing fandom. You can interact with us on Facebook and X at Team Blaney, and on Instagram and TikTok at team.blaney. And finally, we'd like to encourage you to support the Ryan Blaney Family Foundation, established in 2018. This organization supports causes like the Alzheimer's Association and UPMC Sports Medicine through fundraisers, events, and membership in the Blaney Bunch Fan Club. To learn more, visit RyanBlaneyFamilyFoundation.org, all newly redesigned, or follow them on Facebook, X, Instagram, all their active social media channels. So for my co-host Steve Mez, I'm Adam Rogers. We'll catch you next time right here on the Team Blaney podcast.
Good night, Brussels. Check out the TikTok.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.